This film is about Occupy London. It represents my experience of the movement as a camper and activist at the St Paul's site and what I have learned in the process of making this film.
Coming of age during the plague of Reagan and Bush, watching capitalism gun down democracy. It had this funny effect on me, I guess.
There was a real sense of nervousness in the air, and for me, I was very nervous. And the 12 o'clock came, and other people went into action, and I was kind of like, what do I do? I've completely forgotten everything. And then about 12:30, it was like, okay, this is happening. Come on, let's do it.
We were all there trying to push in to get into the London Stock Exchange, the Paternoster Square itself. So we couldn't get in, so then we were, by default, we ended up back outside the steps.
We have to decide where we're going to occupy.
There was the Arab Spring that was, continuing.
Occupy Wall Street had already happened.
This was happening in 1,000 places all over the world, all at the same time. People taking up the gauntlet, the challenge.
There was a whole sort of awareness, like this sort of sense of things are happening everywhere. I must be part of this. I can't not be part of this.
Otherwise, everything that I've learned, everything that I believe, everything that whatever is just nothing more than an entertainment.
Things went so fast. At this point, it was minute by minute. Things were changing.
Quite a few thousand people were prevented from accessing the site.
Sorry? Oh, you've been kettled. This is an absolute cordon, okay? Absolute cordon, what's that mean, sir?
There might be a couple of thousand people on the inside and a few thousand people on the outside.
Which means freedom of the press has been suspended.
I'm not going to discuss it with you anymore.
And those things obviously are designed to sort of thin people out, to put the barrier to get involved higher.
To 11 o'clock at night, suddenly out of the blue, a whole load of TSG appeared at the top of the steps, I suppose, and then started going down and pushing people off the steps. They literally go, yeah, come on. I mean, they just want people to go, like that, and that's it. The narrative has been stolen from us, and the front page the next day will be violence, blood, broken windows.
I'm not obstructing anybody. I'm just sitting down peacefully. I am the peace. I'm being peaceful. You're in my body space. Get out of my body space. Fucking what?
I'm sitting there thinking, why are the police attacking people? Because I couldn't see anybody doing anything wrong. People were just sitting around chatting. I didn't see anything wrong happening.
Luckily, there was enough competent people at 11 o'clock at night on the steps who were going, don't let them get away with it, walk away, turn your backs.
Take him down the ends, pull him out and take him down there.
Police do just what they're told. And the way the policing of protests in this country is shameful, absolute shameful. So this tactic they used throughout the day, and it failed. But Occupy stuck out, first of all, for the reason that this was not the usual suspects at all. It's very big. They did not like the look of this because this was not a specific issue-based campaign.
It was focusing its attention away from the powers that be and saying, we're not interested actually in talking to you so much, we're interested in talking to each other. That's a very symbolic statement, I think. It says a lot about, what really matters in society, which is the people in society. I'd never really seen that done before. It's always been, come to this point so we can send a message to the people above us and then go home again.
It was not just about left groups. It was being open to, left, right or beyond. And that's where Occupy was different. It wasn't just about austerity cuts. It was about looking at the global financial system, and people can identify with problems there because we're all touched by it. The next morning, at 6 o'clock in the morning, I got up.
And there was a communion service, mass at 8. And there would have been people coming in for mass at 8. And there was no way they would have been able to get in because the police were all the way across in a line, bum, 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 all the way across. That's what it was. And they were, I think, protecting, as they saw it, the cathedral from the protesters. I didn't think that was necessary. It wasn't necessary.
What I'd like is, in a bit, there's going to be people coming in.
We should move.
And I'd love you. I've asked the police to go. They're going to be going in 2 minutes.
I didn't ask the police to leave the whole environs of the cathedral, just the ones across the front of the church.
No problem. I've no problem with people protesting. And I know that you're not here to occupy us. It's about the stock exchange, all right? There's no issue. And gentlemen from the police going, if you could help me help you, that'd be like really massive.
That's when the whole kind of situation began to change, and there was a real moment of hope that we could do something.
The newspapers the next day decided to cast this as me saying to the police, go away, and issuing this grand welcome to the protest. And I suppose that coverage of that began to make my colleagues in the cathedral nervous.
Canon Giles Fraser came out and he asked the police to stand down. Because he asked the police to stand down at that point, that means the police have no real way of coming back in and moving the protesters without these legal proceedings taking place, Jamoke. So for the moment, the protesters look like they're bedding in for the winter.
So there's what you do, and then there's how it gets refracted by the media, and then, you know, people often react to the media rather than what actually happened.
So over the period of 48 hours, there was endless assemblies and breakout groups. Anyway, we wrote the initial statement together, wordsmithed it, and then went and read it just as the sun was going down, because this is in October, so it was going down fairly early. As the sun was going down, we had one last assembly where we read out the initial statement. Everyone went bananas, and we got written up.
There was a representative from the Daily Express, Daily Mail, Daily Telegraph, Times, Evening Standard, all sitting on the other side of the small little table.
I'm from LBC, the biggest talk radio station in London.
It was just the most bizarre situation ever.
And the initial few days were filled with chaos.
My feeling of not knowing what was going on when I was at home was exactly the same when you were on camp.
But the kind of chaos that I imagine takes place, you know, after revolutions happened, when there's a kind of power vacuum and people are desperately trying to reorganise their own society.
There was just so much going on that no one could keep up with when the meetings were.
It's the story of what the working groups are doing and how we reach consensus on that at the General Assembly, which is the real story of this movement.
Point, they stick their hand up, people have a clarifying question.
None of us thought it would last so long. It was always like, okay, it's going to be another week.
I mean, it did get distilled down to economic justice. That's the main reason. What we were presenting was something quite extraordinary from the media's point of view. And from our point of view.
I made it really clear to my colleagues quite early on that I did not believe in the church supporting eviction. We had a long and very difficult meeting, and then the chapter voted, and I was on the losing side. I was not the only one. In fact, it was a very close vote. Within about, I don't know, an hour of that meeting finishing, I'd written my resignation letter and popped it through the door. And then the next day, I told everybody and tweeted it out.
The first one will be agreement. We do this. Yeah. Then if we disagree with something, instead of shouting, we do this.
Whatever happens, Nobody wants violence, and that is absolutely clear. There's nothing that could rubbish and distract from the very important issues that you are raising passionately at a time of adjustment, better than violence.
On the Board of Trustees for the St Paul's Cathedral, we know that you have got Corporation of London investment bankers who are very much a part of the 1%. How much pressure you're being put under by them as being internal in St Paul's?
No pressure whatsoever. Now, just a minute. You invited me to come to an open gathering where I expect you to tell me the truth and you expect me to tell you the truth. And that is the truth that I have just told you. No pressure whatsoever has been put on the chapter in any way whatsoever. They are adults with minds of their own.
This is the day the Dean resigned. He was the boss. The newspapers had given him a battering. I was really shocked when he went.
The Church of England and the City of London have been kind of fighting over that little bit of land, you know, for a very long time, because it's not registered to anybody. Like St Paul's isn't registered, it's just assumed.
We presumed, to start with, that it was St Paul's land. So when it started, we all thought it was St Paul's land.
Nobody knew that nobody knew who owned it.
Exactly, yes. So but all of these things would come through in time.
The idea that we'd go away and resolve this land ownership issue, which we've been struggling to resolve for X hundred years, in time to do anything. I mean, this is for those who wanted to evict. You know, you can only evict people from your own land. You don't know what your own land is, you can't evict them. That's why it had to be a joint eviction by the St Paul's and the Corporation of London, because even though they didn't know whether protesters were on which bit of land, they were certainly on one of them, and the corporation was pushy.
Let me start off by talking just a little bit about what the City of London Corporation is, because really it's three things. It's a local authority. It's a charity through the City Bridge Trust with £800 million in endowments. And it's a private corporate body with its own private funds of £1.35 billion. The Lord Mayor of London travels abroad with the status of a cabinet minister, but he doesn't answer to Parliament or to any loyal opposition.
The City of London Corporation operates as the lobbyists for the finance sector. The remembrancer, which is the archaic name for their representative, their lobbyist, actually sits on the floor of the House of Commons chamber. And it demonstrates the sort of influence that they exert over the development of government policy, particularly with regard to how the finance sector is regulated and over taxation overall.
So in one and the same person, someone of cabinet status and a well-funded industry lobbyist, but without accountability.
Just shows you the corporate power that they have. And it's the best example of corporate capture in this country that we can expose.
Do you have any examples of anything in particular that the remembrancer has stopped?
Okay, the democratic reform of the City of London Corporation, so that either the City of London Corporation is broken up and given to the individual boroughs, so that it comes under democratic control, or it becomes democratically controlled by the London Mayor.
So that wasn't allowed to become a discussion?
It was prevented. By
the
and what by the members, so lobbying government.
The City of London Corporation and the powerful, omnipresent private UK finance industry are so inextricably linked that most academics, campaigners, journalists, and even some politicians do not bother to differentiate them from one another. This can be confusing, particularly when the UK finance industry is being referred to.
We now have this gigantic City of London. We're over-dependent upon the finance industry. Our politics have become corrupted by the huge amounts of money that the City of London is able to pump into lobbying. Most of the activities of the City of London are speculative rather than productive. And the City of London is not a wealth-creating body, it's a wealth-extracting body. In other words, extracting wealth from other parts of the economy. And they're very good at that.
But how well does the City of London do in making sure that the system of finance which it promotes upholds responsible business? Well, you know, the last few years are the acid test of that, aren't they? Because the financial system failed. Britain's most important industry, of which I am a part, on which the livelihood of the capital and the country, indeed the world's economic system depend, failed.
So my response to those who say the City of London is an asset to the UK is, no, I don't believe it is at all, particularly when you have to take account of the huge bailout costs when the City of London tripped over.
Its business models were unstable and many of its practices were wrong. The City of London Corporation does not have a position on the causes or the solutions. £12 million of lobbying every year, travelling the world with the status of a cabinet minister and no position on the causes or solutions.
Very early on there was a surprising proposal from the City of London Corporation that Occupy could remain for a startlingly long period in legal terms of over about 3 months, which is a huge period.
Everybody's instinct is to say, you know, F off to the Corporation of London because we don't want to play their game. But we have to be smart about it.
This is not to do with the Corporation of London only. We are here for a wider purpose.
We could actually ask the City of London to stop being a tax haven with accountability. We could also ask that they're democratically elected like the rest of the country. They should also have the same powers as any other London borough, not the elitist powers that they have now.
And let's get away from this legal situation where they're just trying to marginalise the discussion into a legal debate. I do not believe we will win this court case in the legal sense. And I don't think that's what the legal system is there for.
The proposed legal response. If the following terms are met, we will wish to continue dialogue. Number 1, publish full year-by-year breakdowns of the city cash account, future and historic. Number 2, make the entirety of its activities subject to the Freedom of Information Act. Number 3, detail all advocacy undertaken on behalf of the banking and finance industries since the 2008 financial crash. That's the proposal.
The defiant counteroffer went against Bindman's advice because it prompted litigation. Bindman's thereafter no longer represented Occupy London. It should be noted that the involvement of the church in the eviction proceedings was entirely underhand and never made public.
A lot of the stuff coming across on the television makes us look like a bunch of uncooperative, rude. I know the media are terrible, but we have to make a massive effort with the media.
Some mainstream media outlets were prepared to go to incredible lengths to discredit the Occupy London protest. Within one day, The Telegraph, The Times, The Sun and The Daily Mail all featured the same thermal video footage claiming it had been shot by a police helicopter. They also claimed that it proved that 9 out of 10 of the tents were empty at night. Firstly, let's observe just how low that police helicopter would have needed to be to have shot at the angle apparent in the only footage made available to the public. Not only did the protesters formally complain with the Press Complaints Commission, they also made a video proving that thermal imaging cameras do not necessarily show occupancy in tents.
Oh my god, she just disappeared.
The police refused to confirm or deny anything about the footage. 8 months later, the Press Complaints Commission finally ruled against all the publications, claiming they had breached Clause 1 of the Editorial Code of Accuracy. Needless to say, there was no press coverage on that, and by then, the fabricated 9 out of 10 empty tents at night story had long been used as a weapon to ridicule the protesters and divert attention away from the succinct demands for economic justice that they were making.
If they're going to should be doing it properly and not going home of an evening.
People are driving in
from somewhere outside of London and they're staying here in the tents and then they drive home at the end of the day.
No, I'm not. I'm part of OLSX.
You're what, sorry?
Part of OLSX.
Oh, you're part of OLSX.
Despite having missed the euphoric start, I attended GAs within the first few days and began camping about 2 weeks in, as a direct consequence of my belief that what was happening was extraordinary in terms of protest. By this stage, a second camp in Finsbury Square in the neighbouring borough of Hackney had been occupied, but it had less of a political impact, so I chose to stay at St Paul's, producing promotional videos in my tent for the movement's social media platforms.
Good morning.
Please keep your tripods and cameras to the right of this.
She's doing it as part of us to record the main video, so she does need priority.
Can't see the madness. You might as well be blind. There's a fire in the house, but you don't know where to turn.
I would say the average age is about 34. My age is considerably more than that, and I want you to know we may not make a lot of noise out there, but we're all there watching the telly and we're rooting for you.
Let it burn.
The first thing is thank you for coming, but and thank you for staying, because I think with your perseverance, you're making things a little bit uncomfortable for everybody else, reminds us that our system isn't working, that it's frankly been an abject failure recently, and that something really needs to be done rather dramatically to change it.
It had to stay put. It had to occupy ground. It's not just some airy-fairy idea that you discuss with each other. And you know, I mean, I think theologically it's something to do with, for me it's something to do with the incarnation. You know, Christianity doesn't exist without the occupation. I would say, so the incarnation is God's occupation of earth.
Ladies and gentlemen, just a little bit of commentary we do here. We think it's very interesting what's going on here, what's really going on. Does anybody here know what's really going on? Anybody here know what's really going on?
What's happening is we're serving these papers, asking you to move these tents within 24 hours, which you will not do, and then that leaves the way forward for court hearings.
I had recently graduated from law school, so I went to try and find the legal working group who were dealing with the arrests that were happening, but no one was preparing for the impending legal action. So I at this group suggested that another group of people split off and work on preparation for a legal case.
No one's come in to evict anybody, so I think you'll find this is the easy way.
As you know, the corporation served notices last night, and eviction proceedings are very likely to start tomorrow morning. There'll be, I anticipate, a High Court hearing probably next Wednesday, so it won't be a full hearing, I doubt, next week. In fact, I think a full hearing will be some time off yet.
And we should say we're doing it entirely pro bono for no charge.
Let it burn.
The corporation have been weren't able to get there sooner rather than later date, so the 19th of December will be starting.
Protest law is still in its infancy. It piggybacks on the back of human rights law, and so this was a great opportunity to get the courts to consider this properly.
The Tent City University is taking place in a tent, and we have a library in a tent, we have our information point in a tent. There are many reasons why we need the tents.
You have to take up space. You have to make it real.
Two types of working groups. It's very important to realise the ones that are responsible for the kitchen, for our safety at night, the people who are in charge of checking the drains and health and safety. All these people are the glue of this camp.
It was like its own little commune, wasn't it? It was a little community.
What that camp embodied was the sense in which what the kind of success we should all be really striving for is to be part of a shared endeavour. This is what community is about.
It was a safe haven for me to go because it was on the streets. It was somewhere safe where I could be. I have been on and off on this for the last 24 years.
I've been sleeping at the church doorways for 10 years now.
I've been homeless for 10 years. The camp is amazing. There's so much love, there's so much spirit, there's so much compassion. And for what we all are a big family.
If someone felt that they identified with it, they had the same right to participate in it, make decisions about it.
I've never had so many hugs in my life. I'll go now. I've just got to go and get the money for this. I'll come back with the mic, OK? It's £140, and there's the gas man now. I have £40 here.
But that's not my job.
Has there been any donations here today?
Yes, and finance has come and collected them and taken them away.
Go, boss. Where's finance?
The money, what? Can I get a refund?
Oh, yeah. That'll be amazing.
All right, then.
OK?
All right, so here's my 100.
We need the money to pay you.
Nice one.
OK? Sorry, what's your name? Simon. Jim. God bless you, man.
Jim. No worries.
Thank you, Dennis. Oh, that's heavy, man. That's heavy.
Now, the reason I appreciate those groups so much is because they keep the glue of the camp running. It allows for the other working groups, who are what you may call the policy-making working groups, to continue to create statements so that the rest of the country can understand very clearly exactly why we're here.
What are the attributes of good banks for this campaign?
I mean, the first one we're going to go for is the financial crisis and investing in the real economy rather than the speculative.
The point is we don't have a free market. It's much more profitable for a bank to bet in the global casino international system than it is to invest in widget makers in Walthamstow.
And then there's obviously the difference between shareholder and mutual ownership and how that is bonuses and risk taking and all that's interlinked, and then tax havens is an issue.
So Ken, my key message to you is please tackle the tax avoidance.
I kind of rejected quite quickly the way that it was all set up. It was almost a generational thing, but maybe it was a attention span thing.
I tried one or two of the working groups, but I didn't really see the point in them.
a lot more of the people that were a bit more
Having a session tonight, people. Why fucking not? Look, and come on, let's have a stomper. Do you know what I mean? A stomper.
Touchy. They didn't really have time for the working groups. And I found myself naturally allying with those that were completely external from any of the official
structure.
Yeah, the structure.
The worst parts for me was when I was ill and my epilepsy took hold. There was some days when I was really poorly and I couldn't work, and bless them, everybody used to look out for me if I was having a fit. I'd just go down like that and start shaking.
Since I've come to Occupy, you've all been so cool. You've always looked after me, and honest to God, I don't want you to have to leave here. I really don't. I really don't want you to have to go, because without you, I wouldn't have a home.
I thought it was in good taste that the Occupy movement brought all of this human destruction to the surface, and sort of said, well, we're not just interested in these political ideas because they're attractive. It's because there really is a dire situation at work here, and we want to change that.
All I want to do is do a bit of cooking for people that are in my team.
Nothing that we did was going to change the fact that we were going to get an influx of people who weren't necessarily there because they recognised the financial centre as one of the monopoly players that are destroying, lots of things.
There were some people with very special needs, and we didn't have the capacity, the skills, the time to actually help them.
The media were after a story when they started seeing the profile of people diversifying. I called a meeting. We need to create a welfare group, something to look after people.
Our welfare working group is about providing a response to the camp in terms of the vulnerable members of the camp, if they have drug or alcohol issues or concerns around homelessness.
We've had some really, really constructive, helpful homeless people who have helped us and helped themselves by contributing. but sadly we've also had some with some very severe problems who have caused us certain issues that we have had to get around.
I hate to say they're not part of Occupy. I mean, let's just say that they're on site a lot, and it frustrates me, to be honest, Inka, when I have to spend all night, along with the tranquility, all night long sorting out drunken fights and people drinking in the streets, and it makes it really bad to the public because they think we're all doing it, you know?
It's difficult because in certain cases, an act such like that can be a form of protest, but within what we were hoping to achieve and the system we were using at Occupy, you cannot be both a protest camp and provide auxiliary services.
But you're on the streets of London in a public space. You know, it meant we couldn't get too wrapped up in our idealism. You know, there are other things which that aspect of it taught us. The fact that so many people who were struggling came.
There are tranquility involved over there.
Let's continue with the meeting.
Having a physical space enables us to link up campaigns, and one of the things that we're doing with that is we're experimenting with this new model of consensus decision making and horizontality, and it's really, really exciting.
We're trying to do something extraordinary, and the most extraordinary thing about it is truly trying to take everybody's view into account. And to do that takes time.
Lateral thinking is really good, and that's what happens sometimes when you've got consensus decision making, and it's amazing.
Occupy London was a non-violent protest movement that used a system of consensus decision making that required full 100% agreement from all the participants present at a meeting. A few stand-asides were acceptable as well. Consensus is considered by many activists to be the only truly democratic and therefore best method of finding common ground, but there are various ways of implementing it.
We need to get consensus on this as soon as possible.
Occupy London's place in activist history is signatured by its practice of consensus decision-making.
I'll give you an example. One of the working groups that I'm on is the Corporations Working Group. We've just come to the stage where we've got a first draft of our first initial statement. This will go to the GA.
If the General Assembly is not in consensus, back it goes to the working group.
And we go through this process of consensus.
Why did all of our decisions have to go through the central body?
Then that statement is able to go to our press team, and it becomes a press release, and everyone in the camp knows they were involved in that statement.
In contrast, the much larger 15M movement in Spain, who also used consensus, did not require 100% agreement or the ratification of all the working group's decisions in a central GA, as one 15M participant came to tell us.
All the groups have their own statements, because we have immigration, the old people, young people, education, sanity, etc. Homeless. So they have their own statements.
You seem to have this ability and have grown this place of delegating authority, and I really think that's something that we need to think about, how we give authority to groups.
Although the consensus decision-making model has ancient roots, according to Laufman 2015, it was introduced to the global North's activist scene via two Quakers, Zuki Rice and Elizabeth Boardman, in the summer of 1976 for the direct action campaign against the Seabrook nuclear plant in the US. I can safely say that from my experience in activist groups since the late 80s, it's been the default decision-making model for activists, so by no measure is it new within activist circles in the 21st century. Occupy London's attempt to implement it worked reasonably well for the first 3 or 4 weeks, and then...
Will you please respect the process of this meeting? If you cannot respect the process, then leave the meeting.
In any situation of facilitation, that it only works if the group respects the facilitator, and this respect is something that is built through trust, and that actually what you are doing is trying to help them to come to their decision.
Because it was open to everybody,
It was very difficult, but that is a weakness and a major strength at the same time.
You've had your say, love. Now hush.
There was a lot of sexism there, I felt. Like, it was the first time I'd ever really been exposed to, like, heavy sexism, which kind of really surprised me because I thought that it would be the place where that wouldn't have been tolerated.
Calling me a mongrel and like a greedy, selfish, like nasty text messages saying that I did it for myself and I did it for Occupy LSX.
I think you did. I stand by everything I said.
The ideal is always something simple, and the practical is the arena in which we try and work through how that ideal relates to what you actually do to try and put it into practice.
According to leading experts of consensus decision making, there have to be 4 main conditions to make consensus work: a common goal, sufficient time, a clear process, and imperatively everyone must be committed to it, otherwise it cannot work.
The problem with turning up to Occupy London was that we'd been given this consensus is the way we're going to do it because we're telling you that's the way to do it. We turned up and had it presented to us.
What happens in many activist groups, of which Occupy was no different, is that the absence of these crucial conditions is almost always overlooked.
Yes, simple! Simple! What's that? That's it! It's that simple, isn't it?
If we want to come to a decision and a compromise, we need to do it in a just manner, not people shouting out.
Consensus is about finding common ground, but what is much more common in activist circles, particularly when the stakes are high, is that individuals try to make their ground the common.
There were some very dominating characters. Some people weren't conscious of that it was important also to listen to what the rest of the group wanted.
I felt the use of the block option was very much abused.
Anybody feels that a policy is of grave concern, they can block it here.
The block was only really supposed to be used if you felt so strongly against a decision being made that if it happened you would leave the movement and have nothing more to do with it.
Then they must in some way create a direct input to try and resolve their block and try and figure out where the problem is.
They were supposed to offer an alternative suggestion, but they wouldn't do that.
The main thing I can tell you are the things that we've agreed by consensus at our General Assembly. They're not many, but we all at Norwich who were at the General Assemblies agreed with these points.
Although I have little doubt that the Spanish movement had its own problems, they grew in size and yet we diminished. And I do find it interesting that we did certain things in exactly the opposite way.
So only the people in, for example, the media working group can vote on the media stuff.
If we talk about something to touch all the movement, for example, media, of course, if that concerns all the movement, they have to be approved in the General Assembly.
Despite the best intentions of the original organisers, impasses became much more common in the General Assemblies than conclusive decisions via consensus. And ironically, it was the press team, the legal team, direct action groups whose decisions affected the whole of the movement, who were the first to autonomously empower themselves to bypass the central GA system altogether, crucially without empowering others to do the same. This created a 2-tier arrangement that unfortunately excluded most participants from important decisions.
We would get calls in the middle of the night saying, this is going to happen. Can you support us in terms of how getting this news out to the media? And remember, I will tend to say media first. That doesn't mean I'm not thinking about other people, but my role was to think about the media.
We couldn't say we're going to go and we can openly in public and on film say we're going to go and do this because it would have been stopped. So in some ways you have to have those secret meetings, those people that are organising steps in secret.
A lot of those direct actions, occupations, they weren't approved by a central body, and these were some of the big things that moved the story on for us. There were big developments that were to do with people's passions.
But that went against what we were there for, which was that everyone would have a say.
By trying to have nobody having any power, the people that do have the power tend to be resented by other people, and they're working really fucking hard, and so they end up feeling resentful for fairly understandable reasons, and other people end up resenting them as well. So what consensus does when it's ideological essentially is suppresses the issues of power, I think, rather than actually working through them, which is of course what we want to do.
I remember trying to set up this working group called internal communication. that we had this like massive meeting in the info tent, and one individual, which I'm not going to name, blocked the formation of this working group. I think it was a threat to this individual's idea of what Occupy should be and what he was working on.
Ridiculous. This is a ridiculous situation. Firstly, the facilitator isn't allowing people to get the information they want. People just want to know. This is just horrendous. The facilitator isn't allowing people to get the information they want.
They're being lied to. 90%
This is why people are getting frustrated, because all that's happening.
In time, such empowered activists would rarely be seen on the camp to communicate their work, leaving uninformed campers and participants bickering over strategically unimportant matters.
100 quid, let's come to a compromise then. We need gas. So of course you don't fucking
Guys, will 80 quid be fair? 80 quid would sort it?
How am I going to get the gas and everything that I need for me?
I don't even remember you being a part of these decisions, to be honest.
This is one of my points. Well, it wasn't.
There was an insatiable push-pull phenomena in Occupy. Our popularity was achieved by disruption, by people who were prepared to be adverse, unwashed and uncomfortable.
Frostbite in the what? Frostbite in the testicles.
But on the other hand, so many in Occupy wanted the movement to be highbrow, intellectual, self-contained with all the answers to the world's greatest problems, hence the policy working groups. Occupy London's method of practicing consensus was not robust enough to enhance unity between such diverging energies within the movement.
So if people want to use the legal system, I'm fine with that, and people can have different opinions, but it shouldn't stop what the legal team want to do. You can have different opinions, and you can still be here.
You know, if I genuinely believed that justice existed in that posh building down the road, I wouldn't be here.
The City of London were hiring PR companies to discredit the protest. I wanted us to win in the court of public opinion.
One of the legitimising processes of any Occupy London decision was its publication on the official social media websites. Although protection for such sites can be easily understood, non-administrative limited access was also not forwarded to many committed occupiers who wanted it.
Not one person in this camp who has access to any of the media tools. You should have access to put videos and, blogs. I don't get it. All I asked for was passwords, transparency, openness, and to put an end to this little mini meetings. All the meetings, everything should be published online.
But Matt, there's no time to do all of that.
There's
time.
Hardly
time to fucking meet.
This is the thing. There is time. It's just that people who would like to do stuff like that and publish them, they have to go through a certain chain of command to get it published, and then it's those people that are saying, I don't have time. So then why don't they give up and let other people do it? If you look at all this stuff that gets published online, it's all their stuff. And so that's why people start doing alternative stuff.
Because it was quite a sort of chaotic, quite a chaotic affair, for understandable reasons, people on the media team, for instance, were quite concerned to try and make sure that we were managing our message to some extent, but so that did lead to this sort of division.
The irony, of course, is that that division led to the message not being managed.
Any clarifications on that?
But let's get back to nutting out consensus.
You realise very, very quickly that it's exceptionally easy to manipulate people using that form of decision making, because the answer you want can be arrived to by the syntax in which you phrase the question. If you phrase a question in the negative, for example, with a consensus model, a block will automatically result in a no vote.
when you're in a situation where making a decision or not making a decision has equally kind of real consequences one way or the other, the idea of having, you know, a situation where one person can stop the decision being made is incredibly undemocratic.
Although Occupy being a non-hierarchical movement was possibly an imperative factor in attracting people whose individuality is an important part of their identity, 100% consensus is not imperative to non-hierarchical organising. It's an extreme. In Occupy London, all attempts to address the power dynamics as they developed were ignored, denied, or blocked. And within time, even the transparency that we demanded from the City of London was something that we could not achieve within our own movement.
We made an agreement that the signatories of that account would not be revealed to this group.
If they want to be signatories, they have to be transparent. We have to know who they are. It's that simple.
Yeah, but you have to promise not to have a go at them, dude. Or
Transparency, accountability, structure, they're all things that people had different ideas about.
So accountability and transparency are interconnected, but transparency does not necessarily lead to accountability. Accountability needs other processes.
One of the pieces of information which should be offered on there is the net difference between the bank
Last week's and this week's. Last week's, I'm going to have to explain this because it's not that simple as well. So, the net difference, but it's not that simple. So, the net... So what has come in donations this week is £15 online, okay?
Bear in mind our safer spaces policy. If it's violated in any way, we will call this meeting to an end and no money will be distributed. I'm not going to take your point.
Why?
Because one, you threatened me earlier on in this meeting. Two, you've spat on the finance.
When? I've been stood over here, I ain't said a word.
He has a...
I've come out and buy him 70 quid worth of food. No, I don't want it. Hang on, wait. You don't want it? This proposal didn't go through.
So you're lying, it didn't get blocked.
I want to ask for change in facilitating.
You chose not to notice.
We all agree.
The meters keep breaking down because people can't handle the fact that people are making decisions, and we have to make decisions in order to move forward.
On top of all of this internal turmoil, the consensus model contributed to suspicions flaring amongst activists.
Without meaning to get too paranoid, if you wanted to make us leave, and then surely you would try and stop it being comfortable. If someone's willing to cook and there's money available for food, why would you block that?
There could have been informers and snitches, I don't really care either.
Okay. How did you feel when you were accused of being one?
I suppose after a while it got a little sad because you realise after a while how much damage this is actually doing beneath the surface, because it pretty much stops the movement dead before it even gets going, because all the points where you think, well, maybe we should plan this action, or maybe we should try and work with this person, or what if we start this campaign? Before any of that happens, there's a question of, well, do we feel warm and trusting towards each other? And if we don't, if that's been broken down a little bit, nothing really happens.
Working groups such as the kitchen, such as the recycling, we're being run mainly by working class people. So what we've done actually, we've imported the outside society into here. So it's sort of hardly surprising that then we find we're having some of the same conflicts.
There was a lot of a learning about being together in a similar space that was fundamental.
It's good that we're sort of hopefully starting to recognise that this camp just has got a massive problem with staff. If we haven't got the staff to operate the camp, the working groups are not going to survive very long. I mean, this occupation is a camp. Like, that's the spinal column of it.
Well, look at the people who work. The kitchen doesn't turn up to GA. Tech Tech doesn't turn up to GA. Tranquility doesn't turn up to GA. The real working groups don't turn up to GA. The ones that think they're playing politics. The fucking City of London Corporation working group.
Without the occupation, there wouldn't be a new story. There is no story without the occupation.
The main economic question we've got to ask is, are we taking too much, are we giving too little from this camp?
However, if this is a movement, not everybody can camp. And it's not just about a camp.
Everybody wants a revolution, but nobody wants to wash the dishes.
And you know, you can get caught in the martyr complex where you end up going, oh, I'm going to die for this. And there are points within it where I was prepared to basically, you know, give my life for it. Not for Occupy per se, but for the objectives that we're trying to achieve. You know, that's something which, and I've never really felt that way about anything before.
What we got? We got this one, this one.
On November 18th, the disconnect between the empowered activists.
Everyone's voice is respected so equally. The inclusivity is intoxicating.
With the campers became undeniable.
It was the roll of the dice. You took a gamble, now we're paying the price. It was the roll of the dice. Seat of the pants stuff, assets were high.
It was 4 huge office blocks.
They had something like over 400 events over a very short period. It was a captivating, inspiring building to be in.
Marina's working on the information, so she needs to be able to tell anybody everything, like when they come and ask her.
I should be able to. I'm not at the moment.
I can't speak for all of Occupy, but personally, I don't like the squatting at all. I don't like it. I don't know half the people that are involved in it.
We should have had a temperature check here in the GA before going ahead with it. Not because people need to ask permission to occupy, but because it does obviously take people's energy, and it's quite useful to have like a collective kind of decision making where we all say, yes, it would be good to have a space like that without naming the place.
I can't let you see this bit of paper with our passwords on it if that's what you're trying to do.
Because it was a new project and because it was really amazing, I mean, so many amazing things were put on there. It dragged away so many people from the camp. And I was sort of, you know, in the moment that I was dealing with the finance, dealing with facilitating and so on, and it was like, why is everyone like going away? And we need to stay here and we need to hold it.
And people have gone there for fucking full walls, double glazing, the electricity, the 24-hour internet.
They've gone there, they've been seduced.
And we're sitting here, and half the nights I can't even feel my cock in the fucking night time because it's shriveled. And you've seen me here practically every day.
2 months of that'll do. The London Stock Exchange occupation has fucked off to warmer climates and just less cannon fire here.
Because the sort of news cycle, if you want the media to report the same thing again, to open a new place that was symbolically important in its own terms, it was a sort of useful thing to do, but it did have this, I would say, negative effect on the camp at St Paul's.
It wasn't just in terms of media agenda, but it was about actually widening up and access to other people when it is freezing. But absolutely, I mean, the fact it was targeting UBS, it was directly on the money.
It's very easy to keep talking about media. You know, you've always got to play up to the media. Well, actually, hang on, we're humans. We're not cannon fodder, and we are not sacrificial to the media either.
Okay, it was strategic because it was a bank, but it wasn't as interesting as occupying a public space.
If it's part of Occupy, then it's open. If it's not, then it's a fucking squat. Then admit it's a fucking squat and stop pretending it's part of our movement.
Oh, you can't go here. Oh, well, you can't actually come in now, it's closed. And this was like, yeah, but we're part of the same thing. Why aren't I allowed to come in?
Sponging off of us, taking our resources, taking our individuals, taking some of the most skilled individuals we have here, putting into a building with fucking beds.
They just take the piss. It's all a big joke, a bit of a laugh. We're being serious, that we feel like we're being abandoned.
They had a secret gig with 100 invited individuals.
Of massive attack, motherfucker.
Another very controversial event.
I didn't even know that all this shit was happening.
Well, you knew that Massive Attack were playing, right?
Only after.
Yeah, same as us.
Yeah, everybody did.
Technical point.
And there was all these like lecturers from the New Economics Foundation and all these like anti-capitalists who were wearing masks all the time and like, you know, these people in between. And everybody was sober. It was a really weird atmosphere, but really good.
The point is, I just want you guys to know that we are thinking about you, and we all consider St Paul's to be the heart and soul of Occupy London, you know, like, so we want to support you in that.
We bring in the money, we bring in the media. We are the focal point.
St Paul's is #1 place. It is key, it is essential. Yeah. This is the iconic emblem which has gone out to the world.
Let me tell you how it's going to be.
Here's a solution.
I am building two swords.
The cannon fodder part.
Two swords.
Look. Why are you in this tent tonight?
I'm going to save England in 21 days, 3 weeks. Right. And then I'm going to save the world in 100 days. If you want to stop me, if you want to put your fucking mask on, do it now. It is Armageddon if I am not standing upright.
All right, okay.
Nothing ever comes for free. I'll do my best by you, you do your best by me. That's the way it ought to be.
History, what will you make of me? Angel,
Please
outlaw,
move out the way
or
to let the
rebel.
Reverend Jesse Jackson through.
There's something powerful about this demonstration here at St. Paul. You represent Jesus standing outside the temple.
This is not the right place for the protest to take place on the footsteps, foot in the door of the cathedral. What do you say to that?
I think the church, inside and outside, should be the headquarters of the Occupy movement. In some sense, the Occupiers represent the conscience of the church. They are the voice that must be heard.
I teach monetary economics.
And they subpoena each one of us to the grand jury.
Who is the first person you pay when you want to put up a windmill? The landowner.
Wow, you submitted that.
Yeah, Tax Havens Report, Public and Communications Service Union, War on Want.
As we were starting to get, the court proceedings were starting to move forward, I put myself forward as a litigant in person because I didn't want a lawyer to be speaking on my behalf, because the whole point of Occupy was for the general public to represent themselves and say, this is my public good.
The problem is the litigants in persons aren't lawyers and they've not got access to legal databases. It's going to be very hard for them to put forward points which are going to make a difference.
I was being quite idealistic, trying to run a court case where I was facing, quite substantial costs from a tent where it was raining, wind, it was cold, people coming in and out all the time trying to charge their mobile phones.
You know, very, very imperfect though our political situation is, there are very good elements to it, which are the product of people like us in previous generations struggling. Unless those victories were actually sort of turned into legal changes, then they wouldn't amount to anything.
Occupy London is what's called in law an unincorporated association. You need someone to be nominated, in this case, as the lead defendant.
Okay, I'll do it, and I don't have a clue what I was in for.
Here we are, it begins. Over 2 months in, we finally get to take the City of London to task over what they have done to the city through their lobbying activities.
Treasure Island by Nicholas Shaxson, for instance, which goes into the kind of detail of how the whole tax haven system works as a linchpin of this current system of injustice. That book, Treasure Islands, is on the record as part of the evidence for why we were there, and I think that's, if only sort of historically, that for me felt like an important thing.
Sorry. Come in, guys, you're obstructing the highway. Thank you very much.
How long can you hold space to make your point? How long can you attract attention, to draw attention to the message? And so that was Occupy's battle.
For me, it's not really a question about scoring more time, actually. I mean, for me, it's about trying to give this a real shot.
Possession proceedings, an injunction were the next line of attack.
And we know that people are getting damaged
in the process of creating and generating the material wealth that this country enjoys and has enjoyed for a very long time. It's murderous.
I love looking at the Corporation of London's faces, like all the people, you know, and they're just like going on about the pathway being obstructed, and everyone's going on about all these issues. They're just like overwhelmed, they're just like, don't know how to...
The right to choose the time, manner and duration of your protest. All of those things are crucial to making sure the protest is something that can actually be effective.
All of the things that the church was planning had to be put on hold.
How is it we can't simply march because if the protest is legal, how come you're blocking us having the march?
What they do now is kind of manage it, so it's like you're very welcome to protest, but you have to tell the police first.
We've facilitated the march from Mallet Street all the way round to the agreed route, given out to all the organisers.
And they'll tell you where you can go and how long you can be there.
And everyone was told what the route of the march was, and if they wanted to join in on the march, that was the route that they had to be on, okay?
Obviously that way it becomes something that just folds into the status quo and doesn't really have an impact.
It does concern me that the police can misunderstand their role and, to be frank, abuse their power.
There will be no judgment. No judgment until next year. Until next year.
You know, the mainstream media, because it's owned by billionaires and paid for by corporate advertising, did its best to sort of ignore the case that was made by me and the other litigant in person.
The indication we've got is that judgment will be delivered sometime after the 11th of January, and we've now just got to wait.
As we awaited judgment, nothing changed in the internal power dynamics of Occupy London. More events were organised, which helped give Occupy the reputation of being an intellectual movement.
I think one of the things which is very much underestimated by the public at large is just how much careful thought is going into these issues amongst the Occupy movement. You know, it's a really important contribution that's being made to the debate based on sound theory, on the literature, and yes, on different political perspectives, and I'm very glad to be here with Maurice Glassman.
The first time, I think, Steve, we've got to say that the Conservative Party is talking about capitalism. That's quite an extraordinary achievement if you look at the last 30 years.
It was January. It was cold. Occupy London had lasted 2.5 months, and by this stage the St Paul's site looked more like a refugee camp than a thriving activist centre. More squats were being opened in Occupy London's name, which further drained the site of camper-type activists, yet kept Occupy in the mainstream media.
So the Occupy movement will soon be opening the court of the 99%.
The opening of these squats added to the feeling of exclusion and abandonment on the camp, which expressed itself in a variety of ways.
Well, I think this must have happened around January, mid-January. We were shifting from being a positive media influence and being somewhere that people wanted to come and want to experience, into the idea that its existence in itself is both the means and the end. We lost touch with what we were looking for and we allowed it to degrade.
I really think it's important, and I just want to put this out there, that we start thinking about how we are going to leave if we get an eviction.
So there were a number of options, but whatever we did, I felt we should take them over high ground, stop and move, because I knew for a fact we could not win that court case, and I was extremely worried about an injunction being placed on the land.
I don't intend to leave. I don't intend to leave until we've got what we came here for.
I'll just say, if we choose to leave sort of peacefully, I think that would be disrespectful to the worldwide movement that have faced the batons and the tear gas.
The area of public protest law in this country is fast developing, and the Occupy movement are actually pushing the issue as far as legal development on public protest is concerned, which is to the benefit of everyone.
We put, I think, a very interesting and forceful argument before the court that the court effectively decided that it wasn't going to rule on. You know, they allowed us to bring witnesses, they allowed us to make the case, and then effectively ignored it.
I just don't know how you can negate a legal argument out of a summary. I just don't understand if that's good practice.
We were suggesting that if you can demonstrate to the court that it is genuinely in the interests of the wider society, then that should be incorporated into the decision.
The human rights arguments and the lawful necessity arguments were not given equal weight. That's what's suggested by the fact that it wasn't actually in the concluding or the summary statement. That they're now trying to take away the stabilisers of any moral imperative that we have to each other as human beings. Yeah. You know, and it's just. Ah!
I don't know why it is that the courts are less sympathetic to these arguments, but I think the courts are less sympathetic to these arguments.
Excuse me.
In this area. That's another negative of the Human Rights Act, arguably, that the judges are less brave to advance the common law.
I don't believe in the system per se. I believe in human goodness, and we've got to present the opportunity to everybody because we've got to let them know you are making choices.
Now I won't engage with the legal system because you won't win unless you've got deeds to whatever land you're occupying. So I resist it, but I won't play its game and feed its illusion, you know?
Well, we'll appeal. Of course we'll appeal.
Yeah,
we haven't come this far to just go away.
The Occupy message has been heard and will continue to be heard. It has made a difference and it will continue to make a difference.
What this judgment represents is the courts removing David's slingshot in this very unequal battle against Goliath.
This is also going to have an effect on the right to protest and how it's being crushed and squashed, how our public land is being gobbled up by private corporations all over the place.
If we'd left before there was a judgment, then there wouldn't have been a law put in place. The court case would have dropped. That could have been extremely powerful, and we would have got all of the publicity of the court case still. And then it would have been a massive surprise. But you would have needed the General Assembly to approve that to happen.
Even if the General Assembly approved it, I don't think everybody would have.
Absolutely.
What disappointed me most about Occupy was the way people treated each other when they had disagreements.
We weren't conscious of how important it was to create a community, and that people weren't just coming to eat the food, but then it was important to get that energy of like, okay, I want to contribute to this, you know, and that's where I think the lack was.
So maybe we should start by helping a homeless person to be more introduced into give them a job, give them something worthwhile to do, and then they'll feel part of it.
Chomsky was talking about the Occupy movement and saying the problem is with kind of intellectuals or political philosophers or any kind of radical is they spend too much time reading, not talking to each other, not actually building relationships and the true meaning of solidarity, I guess.
Openness does not mean inclusively. Like, in order to make something inclusive, you need to have a very, very clear strategy of outreach towards, you know, the people who wouldn't normally participate in processes like that. You need to rotate roles, and all of that is very important in order to make it inclusive.
All of us have to be prepared to be working in the kitchen, and all of us have to be prepared to learn how to live stream or to get even a better understanding of what those roles are, the kind of sacrifice that they entail.
Really important is that we stop being spectators and using the idea of change as a form of entertainment. Worst acting in a way that's never going to create that change. If you want that change to happen, you have to engage in it.
It's not going to happen by watching YouTube, it's not going to happen by watching this video. It's going to happen by people engaging in topics, putting physical, mental and emotional energy into it. Turns out that's good news because it's quite fulfilling and enjoyable when you do that. You feel far less disempowered, far less hopeless.
You know, in a culture where we're turned into individuals and consumers, it's so often framed by people as kind of, I'm really glad that you guys are doing that.
Hopefully they can hold on bailiffs as long as possible.
Or many discussions about we shouldn't engage with mainstream media. For me, I very much always will come down the line that we have to, because that's what most people in the country around the world read and see.
I actually think that sometimes media attention distracts us from what we want to be doing, and it shaped very much the things we were doing. So that's why personally I'm not that interested in thinking of the mainstream media, because I think then you tend to deform your message to make sure that it's covered in a certain way.
I wish we'd done more direct action. I was constantly calling for direct action.
Because something happens one day, we don't want to be, and we need to respond to it. You don't want to be discussing it for hours. You want to discuss it for 15 minutes, take a vote on it and see what's going to happen and then fucking do it. We imprisoned ourselves within a structure which actually served to be detrimental.
Sometimes movements develop processes in the beginning and then they are unwilling to change them once they become dysfunctional, because the process has become part of the identity of the movement. You need courage to innovate your own processes, to not let them define you so much that you are unwilling to change them, even if when you see that they are dysfunctional.
The period of Occupy, as far as political education goes, I probably learnt more in that period than I could have learnt in 20 years of, say, studying on my own or having the odd conversation with people, because you're immersed in something and you're learning something at the same time, and you're being posed with the real questions of should we make this decision or that decision? Like, how does it work, you know? So that's a big thing.
Saying that this could happen within the next 48 hours. In the end, it happened within the next sort of 48 minutes from that first alert going out.
It's not going to be easy. You know, these things are going to start and fall and fail many, many times. That's what I believe. And a failure isn't necessarily a bad thing, because we learn from it.
Like, what you do day in, day out, how is that going to make a difference? I'm very much a believer of, like, there's a time for these things. These things kind of come in ebb and flows, like waves.
There'll be a surge like a wave, and the tide will go out. But the issue with regard to Occupy and all of the campaigns like this is that we've got to ensure that actually that wave reaches so far in when it goes out, we've moved a bit. And that's what Occupy has done. So don't underestimate its effect. We would not be talking about tax justice now. We would not be having proposals for legislation. We would not have been able to expose what Google did, for example. No one's going to get 100% success, and it's very difficult to maintain the momentum, but it does come in surges.
There is no doubt that the global Occupy surge resulted in the widespread knowledge of the wealth of the 1% and helped boost already existing campaigns, as well as springboard a myriad of initiatives. Campaigns beget campaigns, beget campaigns, beget change. But there possibly is another aspect to Occupy's influence. In the years since the global protests of 2011, the concept of non-hierarchical organising has matured. Its failings are more readily addressed, allowing it to be cultivated into a robust principle, upon which much is being designed, built and envisioned in both enterprise and community organising.
Okay, so we're in a conference in London called Open 2017, Platform Cooperativism, that looks at the synergies between the digital platforms that you may be familiar with, like Airbnb, Uber, Deliveroo, etc. But what happens if those platforms turn into cooperatives?
Platform cooperativism, is that the answer to all of that? Is that the sole solution? Well, of course, it is absolutely not the sole solution, right? But it is one of many answers to this crisis, right? There's the solidarity economy, the peer-to-peer movement, the open source movement. There's a whole plethora of solutions, but that is definitely one of them.
Since Occupy, activists appear to be increasingly aware of the concept of privilege, how endemic it is within activism. There is more of a resolve to challenge it and furthermore create systems that address the power imbalances of traditional democratic structures.
If we think about Overview, for example, which invites civic participation on global issues, the same as Represent Me and various other systems. If we think about Democracy OS, which has been used by the Net Party in Argentina, and Polis, that has been used in Taiwan to apply machine learning to analyse the feedback from hundreds of thousands of people.
Given the present tools, it's quite easy to see that perhaps we don't need the representatives that we've got.
And in fact, the crowd, or the collective, if you like, can make intelligent decisions.
And one good example of that, which I'm really proud of, is what's happened in Spain with the citizen coalitions that presented themselves in the local elections in 2015 and won in all the major cities. We'll tell you what's good for you didn't work. But this highly more complex citizen coalitions, which included various political parties, which included participatory decision-making at all levels, actually won, which tells you that people are not as simplistic as they're made out to be. They can engage with complexity.
Just as the current for change becomes smarter, the tide against equality gets stronger. In the years since Occupy, social media giants Facebook and Twitter converted from effective public spheres to enclosures, dominated by those who can afford to buy distribution and big data, while the rest of us are caught up in echo chambers, pig pens if you like, vulnerable to surveillance and infiltration. So when the next movement, the principles of which you agree with, occurs, please remember that these moments are rare. They should not be wasted on the 100% centralized consensus decision-making model that I hope this film has shown contributes to the stagnation and dissipation of large-scale activism. It's important that the expectation of influence of all participants is tempered in order to prevent disappointment from becoming a destructive force within the movement, and equally prevent the ultimate control of the movement by the few activists and their mates who have initialized the social media accounts and contacts with mainstream media journalists.
Irony is, had we had to vote on the consensus model via consensus, it would never have been put into place, and we'd have probably ended up with a simple majority or plurality system.
The 1%. You know what I mean by that, thanks to the non-violent yet disruptive actions of the entire global Occupy movement. The more people prepared to be disruptive when the next surge happens, in the real world as opposed to the online world, the more likely the next phase of positive change will occur.
Not just civil society groups, but quite mainstream figures are now saying that the bank regulation isn't safe enough and we haven't prevented that too big to fail problem that we had in 2007. You could ask Lord Adair Turner, who was the former chair of the Financial Services Association. You could talk to Robert Jenkins, who was on the Financial Policy Committee of the Bank of England. You could talk to Sir John Vickers, who chaired the Post-Crash Commission, all of whom are now saying that the government and the Bank of England haven't gone far enough to protect the public and the taxpayer from the collapse of the banking system.
So go ahead, make your next bold move. Tell us, what's the next thing you're gonna need to prove to yourself? To yourself. We're occupying the city, we're occupying the